Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I am here to do a collab with Lisa Papez on the Outgrow Yourself Tarot and Oracle deck. So if you haven't had a chance to check out, previous to this video, Lisa over on her channel did a video showing a walkthrough of this tarot deck, and she showcased how this deck functions as a Thoth tarot deck. So what I'm going to be doing today is working with this deck as an oracle deck. So this deck is really unique in that it has both the Thoth tarot associations in terms of the keywords on the cards, but it also has a oracle message on the top of the deck. So it can really be used in a lot of different ways. As Lisa showed, you can use it as a Thoth tarot deck. And as I'm going to show you, you can use it also as a traditional oracle. So if you're really drawn to this kind of imagery and this kind of message and energy in a deck, but you're not really on board with using the Thoth system, or it's not a system that you feel comfortable using or have explored yet, I'm going to show you how you can also use this deck just as a straight up oracle. So we're going to pair it with several non-Thoth decks. Now, most of these, if not all of them, are RWS based. So if that's more your system, this should be quite helpful. So before we jump in, just a quick warning, there is going to be nudity in some of the decks that I'm sharing, particularly nudity in the Outgrow Yourself. So just keep that in mind as you're watching this video. So the first deck that came to mind for a pairing for the Outgrow Yourself is the Black Lilly Tarot. Now this is a little indie deck that I often refer to as kind of like my inner truth teller or my sort of butt kicker deck. And it is a wonderful, direct, to the point tarot deck that never fails to give me the message that I need, even if it's not always the message that I want to hear. Now, the thing about the Outgrow Yourself Tarot Oracle is that the messages are really designed to kind of help you look at your personal growth. And so I love these two decks paired together because we get kind of that sort of butt kicking from the Black Lilly Tarot, and we get the messages and the questions that really encourage us to look at how we are going to be incorporating those messages into our personal growth. So here we actually have the all princesses, although we're not going to pay attention to the Thoth associations in this video. Again, check out Lisa's video for a full walkthrough and comparison. So here we have what is keeping you caged between the Princess of Cups and the Princess of Swords. So if we think of the princesses as the page, right? What is keeping you from learning those deeper lessons of the heart and the mind? I think that's really beautiful. It really kind of creates a beautiful focal point to help you center in on what it is that you need for your personal growth. And the Black Lilly does a wonderful job of giving you that really direct message of this is what you need to work on. This is what you need to be aware of. So here we have the Page of Swords with the Princess of Wands, and you already have everything you need in between. That's a beautiful message. So we'll just flip through a couple cards, check out a couple of the messages, see what we think. I think artistically, these decks pair together beautifully. They have a little bit of a similar art style, which is wonderful, and they really converse well on the table. So here we have Express Yourself Without Limitation, if we're using that as our focal point, and then we're looking at how can we do that. We can do that through the Hierophant and the Knight of Pentacles. The color palettes are quite compatible in these two decks too, which is really lovely. So here we have Your Voice Will Guide You between Death and the Hanged Man. Follow Your Passion between the Six of Cups and the Ten of Pentacles. That's quite beautiful. Risk Everything to Gain Everything between the Tower and the Nine of Pentacles. How beautiful is that? This is showing that risk, right? You got to let things fall apart before better things can come together. And I think that's quite beautiful. So here we have Trust and Surrender between the Two of Pentacles and the Six of Swords. I love how we get kind of similar imagery going on between these two cards. You can see she's kind of tangled up in this fish here, and here she's kind of tangled up in the snake. I think that's quite wonderful. There's a bird on this card and a bird on this card. There's a lot of synchronicities that you can really tap into with these two texts together. Here we have Burn It to the Ground between the Knight of Cups and the Ace of Cups. That's quite wonderful. Do one more with this deck. Reap what you sow between the Five of Pentacles and the Chariot. How beautiful is that? What you put out there, you get back. I think that's gorgeous. So the next deck that I want to pair it with is the Intuitive Night Goddess. Now this is a deck that is an absolute favorite in my collection, and it has a really higher consciousness energy to me. It's all about tapping into that sort of higher self and accessing that wisdom. And when we pair it here with the Outgrow Yourself, I think what we really are tapping into is this beautiful kind of as above, so below kind of energy. So we have the sort of higher consciousness represented through the Intuitive Night Goddess, and then we have that kind of earthy into the mundane of everyday life with the Outgrow Yourself. This feels very rooted in the here and now and in the actuality of what we're experiencing, and the Intuitive Night Goddess feels more like it is the potential of where we can go with that energy. So here we have Count Your Blessings between the Queen of Wands and the Two of Cups. That's quite beautiful. Again, because the color palettes are fairly limited in the Outgrow Yourself, it does pair quite well with a lot of these decks. And also we've got the whole kind of black background going in these two particular decks, which is really wonderful. Here we have What You Stay Focused On Will Grow between the Ten of Swords and the Ace of Swords. That's kind of lovely, right? What you stay focused on here in this Ten of Swords energy is going to allow you to grow into a new kind of way of thinking or new mindset that we see here in the Ace of Swords. So here we have Grow Anything between the Seven of Swords and the Spirit of Swords. It's quite beautiful. Again, tapping into that full potential of what's going on in the mundane realm with the Outgrow Yourself, what you're doing in terms of your personal growth journey, and how you can kind of access the full potential of that represented through the Intuitive Night Goddess. We have what is limiting your growth between the Nine of Swords and freedom. How perfect is that? Here we can see the Nine of Swords is a lot of that dynamic energy, that dynamic mental energy building up. And if you are limiting yourself and not letting yourself expand beyond that, not tapping into this idea of freedom here and this free will, if you're being bound by this, you are not going to see the growth that you need. And I think that's quite beautiful. Of course, I think that these decks can be used in a lot of different ways together. You don't have to focus on the sort of above and below, but that is just what comes to mind when I work with these two together. So here we have Don't Invite Everyone into Your Castle with the Two of Wands and the Warrior of Wands. This idea of being really discerning about who you're letting into your personal space and being the protector of your own personal space, right? Of your own world. I really enjoy that. Here we have Be Brave with the Three of Wands and the Ten of Wands. Here we have stepping into that responsibility, right? Being brave, stepping up into it. Stepping up into your growth. Here we have The Grass is Greener on the Other Side. I love this card. And we have the Five of Pentacles and the Nymph of Wands. Yes, the grass always looks greener on the other side, but it very rarely is. And this is encouraging us to really look at where we are kind of putting that energy into what we're working on, right? Where are we kind of seeing things from maybe with a little bit of rose-colored glasses on. I think that's quite cool. So here we have Learn to Flow between the Wayfarer and the Six of Wands. It's beautiful. Just do a couple more. We have Find the Fire Inside You with the Ace of Wands and Revolution. That's kind of perfect, isn't it? When you tap into that full potential of that fiery energy within you, you can create this revolution. You can create this change in your personal growth. I think so. It's beautiful. All right, let's just do one more. And we have Choose Joy between the Spirit of Wands and the Queen of Swords. Quite beautiful. So moving along to another indie deck, this is the Future Ancestor Tarot, and this deck has a really wonderful healing, nurturing energy, and I thought this might pair really well with the Outgrow Yourself in terms of providing you with that healing energy that you need to focus on the aspect of growth that you're trying to work on. So aesthetically speaking, these are kind of similar in that they're hand-drawn, but we have kind of the black and white contrast between the backgrounds and the cards. They're both pretty minimalistic in terms of their art style, and they both have a lot of botanical influences in them. But as you can see in the figures, the art style is quite different in how the figures are depicted. But I still think they really balance each other out really well, because the Outgrow Yourself, while it is a nurturing deck, it can be a little bit more along the sort of butt-kicking nurturing, right? Like, I'm gonna tell you what you need to know, and it may not be exactly what you need to hear, but you need to hear it anyway. And the Future Ancestor, I think, really does a wonderful job of kind of softening that blow and really providing you with what you can do in a really nurturing, supportive way to heal yourself and to work through your personal growth journey. And I think it works really beautiful together. So here we have challenge your limits between the Explorer of Needles and the Empress. Challenge those limits of what you want to cultivate and where you're headed with what you want to grow. It's beautiful. Don't forget to water your plants. I kind of love that card. That can speak to your inner plant, right? We are a being that needs water as well. We need nurturing. We need physical water. We need the emotional and supportive energy of water. I think that's a beautiful energy to tap into this healing work that we're doing with the Future Ancestor between Temperance and the Four of Candles. Here we have reach your full potential with the Seven of Cups and the Ten of Candles. I love that. How can you reach your full potential? You know, maybe get really clear about what it is that you're wanting out of your personal growth journey, and, you know, pick the thing that is in alignment with you that's really going to help you grow. Here we have be patient. Many things are set in motion between the Alchemist and the Three of Seeds. Really get the idea of what we've created here is getting ready to blossom and grow here, but perhaps we could use a little bit more outside support as we're waiting for things to kind of come to fruition. Here we have you only fail when you stop trying between the Six of Candles and the High Priestess. I think that's beautiful. Interesting how these two figures are both kind of in the same sort of position, both kneeling down, you know, kind of that inherent energy of kind of getting grounded in what it is that you're trying to cultivate over here. Find some harmony in that, and that is what is going to help you keep moving forward. Maybe tapping into some of those intuitive energies, you know, that you might need on your personal growth journey. Just beautiful. Okay, let's do one more with this particular deck. It says, can you accept a new beginning between the Two of Seeds and the Explorer of Cups? So here we have this idea of, you know, we're the Two of Seeds, and we can see this figure is kind of planting those new seeds. And we're asking, can you accept a new beginning? Because what you're growing over here is going to help you move into what's going on here in the Explorer of Cups. And are you really open and ready to accept that growth into your life? Because sometimes when we're experiencing a new beginning, we can be a little bit resistant to that. So it's reminding us to be open to those new opportunities that are there for us. So another deck that I thought would pair really well with the Outgrow Yourself is the Wild Unknown. And this is, of course, the mass market edition. For me, this deck is very much grounded in the mundane world. It feels very much a deck of sort of outside spaces of the world, beyond the self. Whereas the Outgrow Yourself is very centered in the being, in the self. And so I thought this would be a wonderful pairing for kind of looking at how the outside world perhaps influences our inner landscape. So here we have don't drown in a glass of water between the Seven of Pentacles and the Chariot. So we generally have kind of that patience and waiting for things to kind of come into fruition in the Seven of Pentacles. And then we have don't drown in a glass of water. Don't drown yourself in trying to get to this point, right? You need to have some patience for that stuff to grow, but you don't want to just submerge yourself to the point in that work that you're kind of sacrificing your own sense of self in this Seven of Pentacles energy as you're trying to cultivate this thing. And it's reminding you to kind of follow what feels authentic and what feels right for you. So we have what do you secretly wish for between the Father of Pentacles and the Ten of Wands. So if we're looking at this in sort of that outer versus inner, we're seeing that Father of Pentacles where we have that kind of really stable mastery energy, which maybe represents what we are outwardly wishing for. What are we letting everybody else know that we're wishing for? What are we on the forefront or on the surface level wishing for? But here we have this Ten of Wands over here with a lot of kind of heavy, chaotic energy reflected in this particular illustration of the card. So this is kind of asking me to look at, is what I'm secretly wishing for really in alignment with what it is that I'm trying to cultivate outwardly in the world? So does the inner match the outer in this sense? And that's, I think, a great question for personal growth. So here we have find your purpose between the Three of Wands and the Tower. I love that because I love this sort of triangle that is everything coming together in this Three of Wands. It's coming together and we're creating something new. We're birthing something new. That is our purpose. And when we bring it out, and when we find it, and we bring it out into the world, it's going to shake things up for us. It's going to really create this outer dynamic change in our life, which I don't know about you, but a lot of times I need that shakeup in order to kind of get out of my own way when it comes to following my purpose. So here we have begin with yourself between the Son of Wands and the Eight of Pentacles. It's a beautiful sentiment there. We have win and give between the Star and Death. You know, we do need to kind of, follow our path, follow the outer road in order to create that inner transformation that we see represented here in that Death card. But in order to do that, sometimes we have to let things go, right? So this little message here would really be about follow your path, but know when you need to let things go that aren't resonating with where it is you're trying to get to in the world. And again, making that inner space match the outer space, being okay with you're following this path, but also being okay with you have to let things go in order to move beyond that. I think that's beautiful. So here we have grow out of it between the Sun and the High Priestess. How beautiful is that? Taking that idea of that outer expression is wonderful and is beautiful, and we need to grow beyond the outer self and cultivate that inner awareness as well. I think that's just awesome. So in looking at kind of opposite energies, I also thought about the Ember Aura Tarot. Now this is a deck for me that I use often in terms of self-care. It's very soft. It has very supportive messages. And one of the things that I thought these two decks might work well together to help us do is to kind of balance that sort of soft, nurturing self-care with a little bit more of that get your crap done self-care, because there are two kind of ends of that spectrum, right? We have the part of self-care where we are taking the bubble bath and we're doing the meditation and we're doing all the soft, wonderful, feel-good things to help us to care for ourselves inside and out. But we also see in the Outgrow Yourself that some of that work is hard, and some of the work that we most need to do in terms of our self-growth and in terms of nurturing our own development is the difficult, challenging stuff. And so I really love this balance as kind of like, here's the hard work that you need to do coming through the Outgrow Yourself Oracle, and then kind of the softer, more nurturing, more kind of feel good self-care that you can do to help support you as you're doing this difficult work. So here we see grow through life between the Four of Swords and the Daughter of Coins. Really that idea of kind of getting grounded, getting centered, as particularly perhaps in your mental state as we're looking at the Suit of Swords here. And it's offering us the opportunity to grow into what it is that we want to cultivate in our world. So I think that's quite beautiful. So here we have opulence as a state of mind between the Fool and the Three of Swords. I love that. We have kind of that full potential represented in the Fool card here. And yet over here we have that Three of Swords with those kind of interlocking kind of dynamic energy. And for me, the Three of Swords is the suit of the mind. It is a number of growth. And so I tend to relate it to growth of the mind. And we can see that here, that when we're kind of focused on all that outward stuff, all the outward growth, you know, the things that we maybe want to accumulate or what we want to gather into our life may not always create this cohesive state of mind that we're looking for. So this for me is kind of really a message of, yeah, tap into that full potential, be open to all that life has to offer, but be a little bit selective in what it is that you're choosing to explore, because too much is not always a good thing. So here we have cruelty is the highest pleasure between the Sage of Wands and the Nine of Coins. And that's a really interesting one, because it's really, for me, it's looking at how are we being cruel to ourselves, and are we deriving some sort of pleasure from that cruelty, from putting us down? It's not a good pleasure in that sense. And I love this between the Sage of Wands and the Nine of Coins, which is really like, take a look at how you are interacting with yourself and work on growing something that's a little bit more in alignment with who you really want to be. I think these two decks together can make for some really powerful readings. So here we have trust and rest between Temperance and the Son of Wands, really reminding us that we need to kind of keep that balance. We need to trust our body and rest when we need to rest, and then go out and do the things that we need to do once we've reached that kind of state of balance and harmony within ourselves. So here we have every day in every way, things will be better between the Five of Coins and the Daughter of Swords. I love that. Like when we're in this space of unhappiness and things aren't in alignment with what they want to be, we just need to remember that there is always that potential for things to get better, especially when we step into our own authority, we take charge of our life, we don't sit and wallow in this Five of Coins energy. When we really jump into it, as we see here in this Daughter of Swords, and we take action, that's where the change is going to happen. Not in sitting in this energy, but in taking action and moving forward in our lives. That's where the change happens, and I think that's just beautiful. Do you accept yourself fully? And I love this with the World card, right? Are you doing the work, as we see here in the Eight of Coins, to fully accept who you are and be at peace with who you are in your whole completeness? I think that's just beautiful. Let's go ahead and do one more. Stop resisting progress. I love this with the Sage of Coins. You see her arms are open. She has her pentacles on either side. You know, she is embracing and taking in all that she has learned, all that she has grown and cultivated and created. And we can see that reflected here in the Magician. This is the progress that she's cultivating, and she's open and accepting to it. And I think that's just beautiful. So the last deck that we're going to pair with the Outgrow Yourself is the Linestrider Tarot. And like the Outgrow Yourself, this is a beautiful, minimalist, artistic deck. So one of the things that I thought the Linestrider would be really good for is creating a message that doesn't outshine the Outgrow Yourself. So it's a soft message, it's a subtle message, but it allows the Outgrow Yourself, in this sense, using it as an oracle, to really be the focal point and the energetic center and pull for the reading itself. So here we have, what do you need to take the first step? And I love this with the Fool and the Hierophant. So this can maybe just be reminding us that we need to take that first step, but maybe what traditions do you need to help you cultivate that? Or perhaps, if we're seeing this more in a shadow aspect, what traditions are holding you back from taking that first step? In this sense, so we're really looking at the Outgrow Yourself not just as a focal point for the tarot reading, but really the star of the reading. And the tarot is really just providing that supplemental subtext to the card itself, which I think is really wonderful. Because with the Linestrider, you know, we have that minimalist artwork here, and there are just subtle pops of color, and it is a very wonderful contrast to the darker, more bold imagery of the Outgrow Yourself. They really balance each other out well, but it also really helps to keep the Outgrow Yourself as the most important aspect of the reading. The tarot then at that point just kind of becomes the underlying message, the subtext to what we're looking at. So if we're looking at it in that way, we have the sharing is caring here with the Outgrow yourself when we have the Three of Pentacles and the Magician. You know, we've got that Three of Pentacles with that energy of kind of collaboration coming together. We have the Magician with that energy of kind of creating, initiating, cultivating, and we have the sharing is caring in the middle with the Outgrow Yourself, you know, which really reminds us that it's as much a benefit to us to share what it is that we're cultivating and creating as it is to keep it to ourselves. So here we have, are you wasting your time between Death and the Three of Swords? How wonderful is that? Are you wasting your time trying to cultivate what it is you're cultivating here? Or is this something that is truly in alignment with who you are? Maybe that might be something that you want to look at here. So here we have, now is the time between the Chariot and the Five of Wands. I love the way these two decks read together. They are very succinct a lot of the time. So now is the time. Take action, as we see here in the Chariot, but be aware of whatever challenges either may come out of this work or challenges that you might face along the way as you're moving into whatever it is that you're trying to cultivate here. Here we have, hide your secret under the tree, which is quite interesting. So we have that Eight of Pentacles and what you're creating. And this to me is just really a message of what you're creating is not ready to come out into the world yet. So you need to kind of take time, be a little selfish, keep it to yourself. It's not time for it to be out into the world yet. It's still you're still in this creation phase of whatever it is that you're trying to create. Again, we are not looking at the tarot associations, right? Because this is the devil. And that can have a totally different connotation if you're going to add that to the reading. But what I'm looking at is, again, using it as an oracle, just looking at those oracle messages and the artwork. And we can see all of this cultivation happening in here, but she's keeping it all within, right? It's all chained up within her and it's not ready. It's not time to be released into the world, which is really interesting considering that's actually more of a positive spin, even though we're looking at the devil card, right? So here we have Outgrow Yourself. That really key phrase for this deck is all about taking charge, creating what it is that you want to put out into the world with the Knight of Cups and the Empress. That's just beautiful. Let's just do one more. We have, there are no limits between the Ten of Swords and the Three of Cups. So you're not limited by this Ten of Swords energy, right? And I think this is a wonderful pairing because we often see, you know, the Ten of Swords is like, it's done, it's dead, it's over. But the 10 is not the end of the suit of swords. Then we move on to the quartz. And so we're moving on to that next level of being. And this is really helping us to see that there's no limits to this. We can keep repeating this cycle, this growth cycle, moving further and further and further up our own personal evolution. There are no limits to that. We can keep going through the progress. We can keep kind of dying and rebirthing again and again through various aspects of our personal growth. And it's also a reminder here is with this Three of Cups that we don't have to do this alone either, which is really quite wonderful. So we've had a chance to look at this deck paired with a couple of tarot decks, both mass market and indie, using it as a focal point to tap into certain aspects and energies of really personal growth has been kind of what we've been looking at, because I feel like this deck really does represent that energy well. Again, even though this is based on these Thoth structure of tarot, which these keywords relate to, we were not looking at it as a tarot deck. We were looking at it with the keywords or the key phrases at the top, using it as a beautiful oracle. The thing about this deck is it is really versatile in that sense, as you can use it, as you saw Lisa do, as a Thoth-based tarot deck. You can use it as you've seen me do as a traditional oracle deck, asking those questions, giving you those food for thought, those focal points for your tarot readings. Another thing that this deck is really wonderful for is kind of just like a less fluffy affirmation deck. So if you like the idea of sort of simple, succinct, sort of affirmative, go and do this. You kind of got this, but you don't like the super light and fluffy or that kind of energy. This is a wonderful deck for that too, because it's very direct, it's very to the point. But as you can kind of tell in the messages that we've seen so far, it does have a underlying kind of nurturing, you've got this. You can do this growth work even when it's hard. And the messages on the front of the cards are really great for just kind of pulling a 1-card affirmation. Like if I wanted to just pull this and say, what message do I need to know? What do I need to take with me throughout my day? It's plant, forget, harvest. That's beautiful. Another great affirmation for kind of giving you that boost that you need to get your work done. Expose your true self. Just be there. That's a wonderful one. I make it happen. Here's, and some of them have wonderful questions to kind of give you a jumping off point for some things that you might want to work on cultivating in your own life, or things that you might want to think about where you are or how you are growing in this particular space. So how do I start valuing myself? This is a deck that you could also kind of divide it up by the questions and pull some of those out and use those as not only prompts for maybe just some self-reflection, but you could also use those for journaling prompts or for even tarot positions, and it works really wonderful for that as well. So another real quick thing that I want to touch on that I think this deck does really well for, I am going to give it just a little shuffle since we've gone through the cards once already, and I don't want to keep them in the same order. We'll just give it a little shuffle. The deck isn't quite as evenly cut as I would like, but it does shuffle really beautifully. The backs are really, really cool. It's got a really nice flexible cardstock, which is really quite wonderful. So I want to talk about this deck just real quick, and I'm going to pull one more mass market deck that I think actually does work quite well with this particular Oracle deck, even though I didn't pull it out as a particular pairing because I feel like it kind of exists in the same space as kind of the Linestrider, wild unknown kind of energy, where it can really reflect sort of that outside world, and the Outgrow Yourself can reflect more of that inside space. So if we're looking at it in this way, this is of course the dreaming way. If I'm doing a tarot reading and I have 3 cards on the table, and I'm looking at these cards and I'm like not really sure what these cards are trying to tell me in this particular instance. And I'm looking for something I'm just looking for a little clarification on these cards. The Outgrow Yourself is a wonderful clarifier type of a deck, using it as an oracle, right? We can also use it as a tarot for a clarifier, but if we're just looking at the artwork and those key phrases on top, you know, we can use them as a clarifier for each of these cards. Let's kind of spread them out a little bit more. Ring light is just annoying. And we're in shadow. Okay, so let's kind of spread these out a little bit more. Let's pull some clarifier cards for each of these. I will kind of straighten these out a little bit more here. So we have our Strength card, and we're looking at, what does that mean for me? And here we have the grass is greener on the other side. So maybe this is telling me that maybe rather than focusing on my outer strengths, I should be focusing more on my inner strengths, or vice versa. And so I might look at how that card in that position is reflecting that type of an energy. Interesting, here we have the High Priestess and the Hierophant. Again, we're not really looking at the tarot associations, but anyway, we have the High Priestess. And I love this with the message of you carry the seed. So all of that intuitive knowing that you're looking for is already within you. You just need to tap into it. And I think that's really beautiful. So here we have Two of Swords with learn to flow. How wonderful is that? Don't be so caught up in that decision-making process. Learn to go with the flow a little bit more. Maybe it's asking you to look in your life where you're being a little bit undecisive, and maybe where can you just kind of go with the flow a little bit more. So this deck works really well as a clarifier as well when you're trying to kind of figure out what an individual tarot card means in a particular position. It's also a wonderful clarifier if I'm just doing like a 3-card reading and I just kind of need a wrap up on, you know, what was the outcome of this message? What is it that is really my takeaway from all of this that I'm getting in this reading? And it's find the fire inside you. How beautiful is that? Go out, follow your passions. Don't forget to take the time that you need. Let that be the thing that sparks your new journey. And that is what the fire inside of you is representing. And let that be the thing that guides your journey here. So I think it works really well as a clarifier as well, in terms of just, kind of getting more information on a particular tarot reading. Another thing that it works really great for, one more, and then I promise we will wrap this up, is using it for positions for a tarot reading. So like I said, this is a really versatile deck. I'm gonna use these as 3 positions for my tarot reading. Where am I drowning in a glass of water? Where am I trusting, or where do I need to start trusting my tools? And where do I need to realize or cultivate this energy of no limits? So where am I drowning in a glass of water? In the 7 of Cups. How perfect is that? I'm drowning in all of the opportunities and choices that are available to me. Where do I need to trust my tools? The Ace of Wands. How perfect is that? I need to just single in on the one tool that really aligns with the work that I'm trying to do. And that's what I need to take hold of. And that's what I need to work with. And there are no limits. The Devil. I swear you would think I plan these, but I don't. I just shuffle, and I love when this happens. There are no limits. The Devil. Where are you finding yourself chained by the limits that you've imposed on yourself, or perhaps others have imposed on you? And where do you need to break those limits, because really they don't exist? Maybe those limits are in your mind. Maybe those limits are just in a temporary situation. And where can you break away from that? And again, I just think it works beautifully for that particular practice as well. So as you can probably tell, I'm quite the fan of this deck. It is so versatile, and I have used it as a Thoth-based Tarot deck as well. And again, if you want to see this deck in that light, definitely go check out Lisa Papez's video. It's linked in the description box below for you. And she goes through the deck with a side-by-side comparison with the Thoth, which is really wonderful. While I have used this deck as a Thoth deck, I do love that it has such the versatility that I can use it as an oracle as well. It's kind of one of those decks that I can throw it into a lot of different situations, and it works beautifully depending on whether I'm going to focus in on the key phrase, focus in on the Thoth association, or read it completely intuitively and just focus in on this really empowering artwork. And I really do feel that this is, underneath it all, a very empowering, very bluntly nurturing, if that's even a thing. It's not sugary sweet. It will tell you the hard truth. It will make you see the things that you don't necessarily want to acknowledge. But it's also going to support you in that work. It's not going to just throw it out there for you and leave you hanging, which is really wonderful. And particularly when you're pairing it with additional decks, be it tarot or even other oracle decks. So you could do the reverse using this as the tarot, and those other oracle decks, you can use those as your central focus or as your clarifier. There's probably lots of great oracle decks that would pair with this as well. I haven't quite explored that myself. I really like using this deck as either my focal point as an oracle or as the actual tarot deck itself, and it works really wonderful for that. But this is one of those decks that's just super versatile. It actually pairs with a lot more than I originally thought it was going to, because I'm like, this artwork is very specific, right? It has a very specific energy. It has a very specific style. But as you saw, I paired it with quite a few different decks, kind of going from the spectrum of from the wild unknown to something like, the Linestrider or the Future Ancestor, decks that have completely different energies and art styles from each other. And it pairs beautifully. One of the things about decks like this that has kind of this minimalistic artwork is it doesn't, and I found in my experience, it doesn't really limit what I could pair with it. I could pair this with all kinds of decks and I think it would still work beautifully. But aesthetically speaking, it does pair well and look beautiful on the table with several of the tarot decks that I own, which is always handy. But as we know, it's more about how the deck functions, how the deck reads, how the deck works. And this is one of those decks that just really has such versatility that I can use it in a lot of different ways, which makes it a really functional tool in my collection. Because as much as I, like looking at decks and talking about decks and collecting decks and sharing decks, it is really about the work that we do with the decks. And this is one of those decks that just has a really versatile bag of tricks, so to speak, that it can tap into. It can be an oracle, it can be a tarot, it can be a clarifier, it can be an affirmation deck, it can be a wrap-up message, it can be a prompt for a reading. It has so many different things that you can do with it. It's just so fun. And I do really love the artwork. I do find it at times to be a little bit confronting in a minor way. I definitely have decks that are much more confronting than this, but there are occasions where a little bit of the artwork can be a little bit confronting, but in a good way, as in it's just making me kind of stop and think about what is going on. And it's asking me to look at things from a little bit different perspective, which is really nice. And I do really appreciate that. So that is a look at the Outgrow Yourself Oracle Tarot. It says it's a universal tool that offers easy access to fully understanding oneself. The flowers will guide you in every day, every way decisions and offer eternal wisdom. Knowing your future is growing your future. And I love that. I think that's a perfect way to wrap up this video. Again, if you haven't had a chance to check out Lisa's, I will leave that linked in the description box below for you. As always, my friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.